Last time, we stood at a locked gate in the highlands of Ethiopia, before a chapel in Axum that one guardian never leaves, watching over a thing no one else may see. A presence, sealed away. Tonight we travel to the opposite of that gate. Not a room no one may enter, but a room anyone could walk into, because there is nothing left inside it to protect. We are going back to the beginning of everything this series has chased. Back to a single chest of gold and acacia wood, and to the night the building around it burned to the ground. For 5 episodes, we have followed a thread of gold through the dark. A lampstand carried into Rome. A scroll of beaten copper, listing treasure no one has ever found. Jars sealed in desert caves. A brotherhood of knights, arrested and dissolved. A fleet that slipped over the horizon. And always, beneath each story, the same shape. The oldest relic of them all, the one every other mystery seemed to circle back toward. Tonight the circle closes. We stand at the source of the chain, in the city where it was last seen, on the worst night in its history. Picture Jerusalem before the fall. At its heart stood the first temple, raised in the age of Solomon, and at the heart of the temple, a chamber no daylight ever touched, the Holy of Holies. Behind a heavy veil, in the dark, the Ark of the Covenant was said to rest, a gilded box crowned by 2 golden cherubim, holding the tablets of the law. The high priest entered that room once a year, and no more. To those outside, it was the most charged point on earth, the place where heaven was said to lean close to the ground. And then the armies came. The king who came was Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, the great power of the age. He had taken Jerusalem once already, years before, carrying off its young king Jehoiakim and leaving behind a vassal named Zedekiah to rule in his place. For a time the arrangement held. Then Zedekiah did what subject kings so often do. He gambled on rebellion and looked to Egypt for help that never truly came. Babylon's answer was not negotiation. It was an army on the road to Jerusalem and the slow machinery of a siege closing around the city's walls. The siege ground on for the better part of 2 years. Inside the walls, the famine grew unspeakable. Outside, the engines waited, and then, in the summer of the year 586, the date most scholars settle on, though some argue for 587, the walls broke. The Babylonian commander Nebuzaradan put the temple to the torch. We will not linger on the suffering of that night. The sources are grief enough. Picture it instead from a distance, a city on a hill and a long red light along the horizon where the house of God burned against the dark. What happened next is, strangely, where the record becomes precise. The Babylonians were not only destroyers, they were accountants. Their scribes and the writers of the Hebrew scriptures alike kept careful track of what was carried out of the ruined temple. The books of Kings and Jeremiah read almost like a ledger. The 2 great bronze pillars, broken up for their metal, the vast basin called the sea, the stands, the pots, the shovels, the sprinkling bowls, the censers of gold and silver. One passage even pauses to count the pomegranates cast along a single pillar. Everything of value was tallied and weighed and written down. Everything except one thing. Read those inventories closely, and a silence opens at their center. The pillars are there. The basins are there. The smallest fittings are there. The Ark of the Covenant is not. The single most sacred object in the building, the reason the inner room existed at all, does not appear on the list of what Babylon took away. The scribes who counted the pomegranates did not record the ark. And in that gap, in what the ledger does not say, the whole of this mystery is born. There is a harder possibility, and honesty demands we name it. The last time the Hebrew Bible clearly places the ark inside the temple is not on that final night at all. It is a full generation earlier, in the reign of the reformer King Josiah, who instructs the Levites, in the book of Chronicles, to set the holy ark back in the house that Solomon built. After that command, the texts simply fall quiet. No later writer describes seeing it, which raises a question the legends rarely ask aloud. When Babylon finally came, was the ark even still there to be taken? From that silence, the theories grow. The plainest answer is also the bleakest, that the ark burned with everything else, or was hacked apart for its gold and carried off as nameless treasure, its very identity lost the moment it left the room. A second tradition holds that it was taken whole to Babylon. But here the record argues back. When the exile ended and Persia's King Cyrus sent the temple's vessels home, the returning inventory carefully names dishes and bowls of gold and silver, and, once again, no ark. If it went to Babylon, it never came home. Against the bleak answers, the hiding legends rose, and the oldest of them is written down. In the second book of Maccabees, composed centuries after the fall, the prophet Jeremiah is warned of the coming destruction. He carries the ark, the sacred tent, and the altar of incense up the mountain Moses once climbed, Mount Nebo across the Jordan, and seals them inside a hidden cave. When his followers try to mark the path, they cannot find it again. The place, the text says, is to remain unknown until God gathers his people once more. A legend, told as a legend, but the first of its kind. The later rabbis added their own answers and could not agree. Some taught that the ark was carried into exile in Babylon. Others insisted it was never taken at all, that it lay hidden in a chamber deep beneath the temple's own floor, concealed by Josiah before the end, under the very ground where it had always stood. In a later age, priests were said to bow a little longer at a certain spot near the woodshed, remembering what lay beneath it. And a few scholars push the vanishing earlier still, to the wicked King Manasseh, who set an idol in the temple, and may have cleared the ark away to make room for it. Then comes the strangest piece of evidence, and it too is an absence. Centuries later, a second temple stood on the same ground, and into its innermost room, where no foreigner was ever meant to set foot, the Roman general Pompey forced his way. Rome expected to find a hidden idol, or a hoard of gold. The historian Tacitus records what Pompey found instead. The sanctuary was empty, the holiest room in the world, and it held nothing at all. Whatever had once stood behind the veil was long gone, and the empty room itself had become the relic. And still, people came to dig. The last serious search beneath that ground unfolded little more than a century ago, when a British aristocrat named Montague Parker was persuaded by a Finnish mystic that the Bible held a secret cipher, a map to the buried treasures of the temple. Parker and his backers bribed their way to the site and tunneled by night, creeping toward the sacred rock at the city's heart. In the spring of 1911, they were discovered. The city erupted. Parker fled to the coast and sailed away, carrying nothing but a handful of broken pottery. After him, the digging stopped, and beneath that holy ground, it has never resumed. So the chain closes where it began. This series opened with a relic that vanished. It ends in the very room it vanished from, a room we may enter freely, precisely because nothing is left inside to guard. In the highlands of Axum, a presence no one may test. In Jerusalem, an absence no one can fill. Perhaps that is the truest shape of the ark. Not an object to be found, but a silence at the center of the story. Yet one treasure of that temple did not vanish without a trace. A lampstand of gold, carried in triumph through Rome, carved into an arch that still stands. Next time we follow the menorah into the dark. This has been Anytime Stories.